Good morning, Word of Life Church. My name is Dustin McCain, and I've got a secret this morning. I found out a long time ago that secrets are a lot more fun if everybody knows about them, so I'm going to let you in on the secret, okay? I'm not a preacher. People in here that know me think, Dustin, that's no secret. Everybody that knows you knows you're not a preacher. And for those of you that don't know me, you're thinking, well, what in the world are you standing up there holding a Bible with a mic strapped to your ear for? And I'm going to tell you. So years ago, I was in prayer, and I just felt like I was in a good place in my life, and I was thanking the Lord for all the many blessings He had given me. I was thanking Him for my beautiful, amazing, outstanding wife, who, quite frankly, many folks never thought we'd end up together. As a matter of fact, my father-in-law loves to tell the story about my mother-in-law and the first time she met me. They walked out of the restaurant. My mother-in-law told my father-in-law, over my dead body. Every now and then I walk up to her and check her pulse and show her my ring and just remind her, you're still breathing. I'm still married to your daughter. In her defense, she had every reason in the world to feel that way probably back then. I was thanking Him for my beautiful kids, Lily and Grace McCain and Dustin Clay McCain Jr., both of which we were told by numerous doctors we could never have. But you know what? God's word doesn't always line up with the words of a doctor, and I've got two beautiful youngins sitting right over there to prove it. I was thanking Him for health in my body. See, I was told in my early 20s that I had Crohn's disease and that I would be sick for the rest of my life. I stand before you today healed and whole. Hadn't been sick in years. I was going through all of these things that I was just thankful for. I also found myself in a really good place professionally. And I was thanking the Lord for those things. And I was thanking the Lord for those things. He asked me a question. And the Lord doesn't always speak to me when I'm praying, and when He does, I try to listen. So He asked me a question. He said, Dustin, He said, how many people do you think you've talked to about a product or a service throughout your career? Now, I've been in some form of sales or leadership since I was 16 years old. And I'm thinking, the answer to that's thousands. And you know how when you pray and your mind just starts to wander and you start thinking about all the people you've talked to, and I was certain it was thousands. Before I got too far down that rabbit hole, He asked me another question. He said, Dustin, how many people have you talked to about me? I thought, I can't really fudge these numbers. He knows the answers or He wouldn't ask the question. You know, there's no way you just can't fake Him out, right? And I'm like, well, you know the answer. And He said, listen, look, don't worry about it. He said, but here's what I want you to do going forward. He said, I want you to talk to as many people about me as you have a product or a service in your life. And I thought, oh, good Lord. I'm going to pull a Jonah. I'm not going to Nineveh. I didn't want any part of it. I'm thinking, this will take the rest of my life. I didn't know how in the world He expected me to get that done. And quite frankly, I ran from it. Like I was just kind of hoping. You ever had God drop something in your heart and then it don't come back up again? I was hoping it was one of those things. Like maybe He's not going to mention that one again, right? He kept on mentioning it. I kept on running. And finally, I realized I was going to end up in the belly of a whale if I didn't stop. And I said, okay, Lord, I'll do what you're asking me to do. And I'll tell you, almost instantly, after I made that decision, my phone rang. And it was Pastor Joel. I'll never forget it. It was in December. He called me and he said, Dustin, what are you doing in March? Guys, it's hard to come up with an excuse 3 months away. I'm like, what do you need me to do? And in honesty, I thought he was probably called to invite me on a mission trip or something like that. I'd been on one before. And guys, if you've never been on a mission trip, go. Go. It's a trip of a lifetime. But anyway, he said, no, Dustin. He said, I want you to preach a service for me in March. And I thought, wow, I've never preached a formal service in my life. And so at the time, we were in our Lakeland campus. We were having 5 services a weekend, one on Friday night, one on Saturday night, 4 on Sunday. And the obvious question was, great, Pastor, which one do you want me to preach? He said, all of them. I said, you want me to preach all 5 services? He said, yeah. And then my analytical brain gets to working, and I start thinking, man, this is great. I'm going to preach all 5 services. I'm going to talk to thousands and thousands and thousands of people in one weekend. I'm going to knock this assignment out in March. I mean, it's the beginning of faith. I'm fired up. One and done. Drop the mic. I'm out. We're done. That was the beginning of faith, the excitement. But how many of you know that faith can get messy sometimes? See, right there at the beginning, it can seem pretty easy. But let me tell you what started happening. See, the Lord had spoken to me in a small, still voice, asking me to do these things. And as that March date grew closer, I started hearing screaming in my spirit. I started hearing the enemy talk to me. And what the enemy was saying is, Dustin, are you kidding me? You? On a church stage? Look, I have no problem being the center of attention. As a matter of fact, anybody here that knows me will tell you, if I'm not the center of attention, I'll oftentimes insert myself into the center of attention because it's where I'm most comfortable. It wasn't speaking to a crowd. I've been speaking to people my entire life. People have been trying to get me to shut up my entire life. It was not talking that was the issue. It was the stage. It was the word of life stage. It was the enemy telling me, Dustin, you're not worthy of that stage. Do you know who all stands on that stage? You know everybody that stands on that stage has been to Bible school. You ain't been to Bible school. Can you think of the spiritual giants that have stood on that stage? Word of Life Church, they hire some of the most amazing, talented speakers in the world to stand on that stage. And you? Are you kidding me? Pastor Joel went to Bible camp. You went to deer camp. He didn't really say that. I made that part up. It was fear. I was so scared to step on that stage. And as a matter of fact, it got so bad that I took off the Friday before the Saturday night that I was supposed to preach. And I was so stricken by fear. And it was something that genuinely I'd never felt. It was spiritual. And I decided that I would call Pastor Joel. And I would ask him, could I preach from the floor? Is there any way we can just move the table down so that I can preach from the floor? Because I don't deserve to be on that stage. And most people, when they get nervous or they get stressed out, they may overeat, they may drink too much. Me, I've got to get outside and I've got to get alone. And so I was cutting my grass for like the 4th or 5th time that week. And I'm in prayer again. And I'm talking to the Lord, and luckily he asked me, just in my spirit, he said, Dustin, he said, did I ask you to do this? And I said, yeah, I'm quite certain of that, because I promise you I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. And he said, Dustin, did I give you the platform? I said, yes, sir, because again, I can promise you there's no church in the world that would allow me to get on their stage otherwise. And he said, Dustin, he said, I want you to know something, son. He said, when you step in the center of that stage, you're stepping in the center of my will. And as long as you're standing in the center of my will, it ought to be the most comfortable place on earth. And not only that, I'm going to be there with you the whole entire time. Amen? How many of you know, though, faith is like that? Faith can get messy. Faith will take you places that you would have never imagined that you would be. You'll wind up on stage that you were never planning to be on. But you've still got to follow that small, still voice of God. Matthew 17:20, I'm going to set it up for you. Peter, James, and John are up on a high mountain with Jesus. As they start coming down the mountain, the multitudes are down there, and there's a man, and his son is crazy. He's a lunatic. And as soon as Jesus comes down the mountain, the man looks at Jesus. He says, Jesus, I need you to heal my son. My son is crazy. My son's a lunatic. Your disciples, they couldn't do anything with him. They couldn't help him. They couldn't heal him. I need you to help. And Jesus, of course, although a little frustrated that his disciples weren't able to heal the man's son, instantly, it says within the hour, Jesus healed his son. A little while later, Matthew 17:20, they're going to put it on the screens. He got the disciples alone. And they asked, they said, why couldn't we heal the young man? And he replied, because you have so little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can tell this mountain to move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. And I got to reading this, and I got to thinking about it. And the question I had to myself is, why the mustard seed? He could have used dust. I mean, he'd used dust before, right? We came from dust. We're headed back to dust. Abraham was going to have as many descendants as dust. He could have used dust. Sand. Sand is used throughout the Bible. Sand smaller than a mustard seed. If it was just about size, why didn't you use something else? I'll tell you the conclusion that I came to. The mustard seed is absolutely useless unless you do something with it. See, a mustard seed in your hand is useless. You have to plant the mustard seed in order for anything to happen. You have a responsibility in your faith. You've got to get that mustard seed in the ground. And guys, I want you to think about something. When you're planting that mustard seed, when you're watering that mustard seed, when you're fertilizing that mustard seed, guess what? Things can get a little messy. You're going to be doing some things that maybe you hadn't necessarily planned on doing in the natural. But if the Lord leads you in that way, you need to plant your seed. You need to follow his leading. You've got to act. Matthew 13:3-9 on the screens. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he scattered the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds instantly came and ate it up. Guys, these are the words of faith that God's trying to get to you that you're not even close enough to hear. This is the thing he's trying to get through to you when you're texting somebody from church or on Facebook or Instagram. These are the things that you never even know. You never even hear. Your heart's just not open. He says some fell on the rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seeds fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. These are the words that you know. These are the words that you hear, maybe in a service like this or maybe in prayer. And you know you ought to do something with it, but you do like I did at times. You just hope it's going to go away. It's just not falling on good ground. You're hoping he won't mention that one again. We've all been there, right? You know to send the text. You know to make the call. You know to buy the flowers. Whatever the case may be. You know to say the prayer. You know to go visit. And you just neglect it. And you don't go. Still other seeds fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whosoever has ears, let them hear. Thank God for good ground. Thank God that your hearts are open this morning to receive. Thank God that when we leave here today, we're going to do the things that he called us to do. Years ago, I took a job with a company as a sales manager. And I inherited an incredible group of guys to work for me. And one of the guys, he was a little bit older than me. As a matter of fact, he had worked for the company longer than I had been alive. His name was Mr. Willie. And Mr. Willie would call me, and Mr. Willie would start his stories with, Dustin, it was 1982. Guys, if anybody ever throws an and, okay, between the century and the decade, you're in for a long story, okay? And Mr. Willie would start his story, and he would tell me about this customer and the way they started their business and their kids and their grandkids and the last 3 machines they bought and what was going on, and he'd bring me all the way up to present day, and the whole time I'm thinking, Mr. Willie, it's going to be 20 and 25 by the time you get through talking. And finally, Mr. Willie would wrap up. And when Mr. Willie finished his story, I'd ask him, Mr. Willie, based on everything you just told me, what's the right thing to do? Morally and ethically, with all the history you have, what's the right thing to do? Do you know Mr. Willie never got it wrong? Not one time, the entire time he worked for me, he never got it wrong. He answered it right every single time. He was just waiting on somebody else to give him permission to do what he already knew to do. Don't we at times, I know I do the same thing? Don't we at times know exactly what God's calling us to do? Don't we know where to plant our seed? Don't we know when to water it? But we're waiting on that moment in life where everything lines up perfect. We're waiting on somebody else to give us permission to do what Jesus has already told us to do. I'm here to tell you this morning, don't be Mr. Willie. You've already been told, you know what to do. Do it. Plant that seed of faith. And know going in, chances are, it's going to get messy. But God's going to be right there with you the whole time. See, faith requires action. James 2:20 says it like this, faith without works is dead. You got to do something with it. You know, oftentimes when we think about faith, our mind immediately goes to miracles and the miracles of Jesus. And so I'm thinking about the miracles of Jesus, and I did what I think most preachers would do. I Googled them. And after I got through Googling them, they all came up in chronological order, and I'm looking for a tendency. I'm looking for something that happened almost every time. And you guys, the first miracle of Jesus, this is one that I enjoy going over because, quite frankly, if you're not finding humor in the Bible, you need to look a little harder. But the first miracle of Jesus, they're going to put it on the screen. You guys all know what it is. Jesus changes water into wine. It says on the 3rd day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, so we know Mary's present. And Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Boy, Mary, you wanted to call in the big guns, didn't she? She said, woo, we out of wine. We're going to have to call on Jesus. What did Jesus say? He said, woman, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come. Let me ask y'all a question. When's the last time you referred to your mother as woman? I wish there had been cell phone video of this because y'all know old JC got the side eye from mom. You know he did. He got that look that said, don't make me call your daddy at work, right? Because look what he did. He responded. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. Now, Jesus done said he wasn't doing nothing. It ain't his time. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. And you guys know what happened, right? The water turned into wine, and we ain't talking about no box wine. We're talking about the good stuff, okay? This ain't the Kirkland's brands from Costco. He made the good stuff, right? Sometimes we need to do what the servants did. Sometimes we just need to do whatever he says do. Sometimes we got to fill the jars. You see, as we look at other miracles, let's think about Simon Peter. He caught a boatload of fish. But first, Jesus told him, launch out into the deep and cast your net. Paralyzed man, Jesus healed him, but not before somebody tore the roof off the house. The man with the withered hand, what did Jesus tell him to do? He said, reach out your hand. Sometimes we all need to reach our hand toward Jesus. Fed 5,000, but not before everybody sat down and they broke the bread. The woman with the issue of blood, she had to press through the crowd. She had to grab the hem of his garment. Jesus healed Lazarus, but not before he instructed somebody else to roll away the stone. See, we all play a role in our faith story, and sometimes, you just have to tear the roof off the house. Sometimes you've got to stretch out your hand. Sometimes you got to break the bread, press through the crowd, and roll away the stone. We got to listen to Mary's advice and do whatever he tells us to do. You say, but Dustin, I don't feel like I'm equipped. What I'll tell you this morning is, if he didn't equip you, he wouldn't have called you. I can promise you, if he's leading you to do something, he's going to be right there standing with you the whole entire time. 1 Samuel 17, a few weeks ago, my son asked me a question. He said, Dad, what's your favorite Bible story? And before I could answer, he said, never mind, Dad, I know what it is. It's David and Goliath. I said, well, I guess from now on, my favorite Bible story is going to be David and Goliath. And I thought, I'll put that in the sermon I'm about to preach. So let's think about David and Goliath. David is a young shepherd boy. He comes home and his dad says, look, go check on your brothers. They're on the battlefield. And here, take them a sandwich, right? Get on out there and take them a snack. So David heads out. He goes to the battlefield, and what does he find? He finds Goliath, uncircumcised Philistine, and what's he doing? He's taunting the armies of God. And David said, what in the world is going on? Why don't somebody kill this guy? Y'all not going to do anything. I'll kill him. What happened? Everybody around him started telling him, you're not ready. Are you kidding me? You're too young. You're the shepherd boy. You're not a warrior. What are you talking about? You'll go kill him. What? You're not ready? You didn't go to Bible school. You're not equipped to stand on that stage. David didn't listen to the enemy. What did he do? He did what he knew to do. He did what he'd heard from God to do. He picked up his 5 smooth stones. He killed Goliath. He chopped off the man's head with his own sword, and he walked off the battlefield victorious, soon to become king. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're doing what the Lord has called you to do, it's going to get messy, but you'll never get to the other side until you're willing to pick up the stones. You've got to do something. You are responsible for your faith journey. God has equipped you, or he wouldn't have called you. I got a very close friend of mine who, years ago, he and his wife, they were living out in Gluckstadt. They had 2 young boys, and they were going to school in Jackson, and he decided, you know what, I want to live a little closer to town. We want to move in closer because you guys know how it is when you got young kids. You're running all over the place, and it was just taking a long time. And they had their heart set on the township over here in Ridgeland. That's where they wanted to be. And as a matter of fact, they went to look at a lot in the township. And the day they went to look at the lot sold that day. And so they're leaving the township, and they're leaving discouraged. And as they're pulling out, they see the St. Jude Dream House in the township that's being built. And my buddy looked at the house, and he told his wife, he said, we're going to win that house. She said, what are you talking about? He said, no, I'm serious. He said, I feel like we can win that house. And she said, okay, well, if you want to hook up for it, believe for it, I'll believe with you. Now, this guy, he's a good steward, okay? He's a giver. He's a tither. He knows what to do. He knew to start praying for the house. He knew to start believing for the house. He knew to stand on the word. He would go out, he'd walk around the house and pray. He was checking all the spiritual boxes. He was doing everything right. And he came to church one Sunday morning, and we were ushers at the time together, and we used to pass plates where we were going to church, and we were in the back, and we were counting the money. And I asked him, what you would ask anybody. You're hanging out before Sunday afternoon. I said, what are you guys doing this afternoon? He said, I'm going to pick up the keys to our new house. I said, man, y'all are buying a house? He said, no, I'm going to win one. I'm telling you, he had all the confidence in the world. So much so, if I'm being honest, that my heart broke a little bit. Because I thought, if he doesn't win this house, what's it going to do to his faith walk? He is so bought in to the fact that he's going to win this house that if something happens and he doesn't win, and you guys can imagine what the odds are of winning the house, right? I said, it's just going to destroy his faith. So what did I do as a friend? I decided to increase his odds. I decided that day I'd participate because I thought, look, here's the deal. If something happens and he doesn't win the house, and maybe I do win it, then what I'll do, this is what a good friend does. If I win the house, I'll just give him the opportunity to come see the house every now and then, right? I mean, that's what a good friend would do. I mean, what's the next best thing to winning the house? Your buddy winning it. So that's what I did. That afternoon came. You guys don't have to wonder what happened. He and his wife won the house. See, God had not given me the seed of faith for him to win the house. God had given him the seed of faith for him to win the house. And I've heard this story told over and over and over again for the past 10 years. You know the part of the story that always gets left out? This is going to be profound. You're going to want to write this down. If I say something profound, it doesn't happen often, so I'll tell you in advance. Do you guys know what he did in addition to all that other stuff that set the whole thing in motion? He bought a ticket. He bought a ticket to win the house. He did what he needed to do in the natural. He picked up the stones. He rolled away the stones. He pressed through the crowd. He did his part. You're responsible for a portion of your faith story. Years ago, when I was 18 years old, I decided to move to Nashville, Tennessee to go to college. I lived with my mom's best friend, who happens to be here this morning, Miss Cindy Owen. She came down from Nashville to see me preach this morning. And Cindy Owen worked for a rather large entertainment company in Nashville, Tennessee. And one thing you learn in Nashville, whether you're there or LA or whatever the case may be, you don't name drop, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, in Nashville, everybody knows somebody famous, right? It's just not that big a deal. And not only that, I wouldn't want my good friend Reba McEntire to get upset with me about dropping her name. Hold on, guys. We're not in Nashville and Reba's not here, so it's okay, right? But I instantly got thrown into a world that very, very few people get to see. And not only am I getting to see it, I'm getting to see it up close and personal. And oftentimes, I'm getting to see it from backstage. I'm getting to see it from behind the scenes. And guys, I want to tell you, backstage is an awesome place to be. Backstage is pretty prestigious. Backstage, and I'm not talking about the deal where you get a little sticker, right? And you get to go back and spend 3 minutes with the artist and they sign something and send you on your way. That's not the kind of backstage I'm talking about. I'm talking about the kind of backstage where they put that lanyard around your neck that says all access pass. And I don't know what's in that lanyard, but what it does, it makes your shoulders go back. Makes that old nose go up just a little bit because you're on the inside. And let me tell you what happens backstage. Backstage is comfortable. Backstage, there's areas that are just so cozy. But at the same time, backstage can sometimes be chaotic. But you can almost feel the crowd. You can hear what's going on in the auditorium. You can smell the smoke. Being backstage is like the beginning of faith. You know something is about to happen. You know something could happen, but you also know that nothing is going to happen unless somebody steps on stage. Unless somebody is faithful with the gift that God has given them. And the other thing you know that the best is yet to come. Throughout the entire concert, see, you've got a copy of the set list. And you know that the best is yet to come. That artist, they don't sing their best song right when they step on stage. They go through the entire show, right? And then what do? They step off stage, and the lights go down. And as they're backstage, guess what? They're comfortable. They're comfortable backstage. But they know, and everybody in the crowd knows, that they hadn't given their best yet. They hadn't sung their signature song yet. And so everybody in the crowd can't wait for them to do what? For them to come back out, right? So from backstage, you hear the crowd. And you know that they're on their feet. I want you guys to stand to your feet this morning. You see, the best part of the show is the encore, right? The best part of the show is when the artist has stepped off stage, maybe gotten a little comfortable, but then they know that they haven't given their best, that they've got to step back on stage, and the people know it too. I think that we can be much like the artist at times. Maybe we've done some things for the Lord. Maybe we've done some things in our Christian walk that we're pretty proud of. Maybe we got that lanyard around our neck and our old shoulders are back. Nose is up a little bit. We've done a few things. But you know what we hadn't done? We hadn't given our best. I'm here today to tell you that your best is yet to come. I'm here today to tell you that the past year has been crazy, right? The past year we've been through protocols and masks and vaccines, and we've been through everything in the world, and we've somewhat been backstage. We've somewhat been behind the scenes. Some of us have been very comfortable, but I'm here to tell you today that your best days are ahead. See, the best part of your show is the encore. My question for you is, what's your encore performance going to look like? What are you going to do? What seed are you going to plant? What leading are you going to follow? What does your encore performance look like? I think Jesus loves the encore. You know how I know? Because Jesus invented it. Jesus invented the encore. He stepped off stage for 3 days. He defeated hell, death, and the grave. He came back so that you could live your best life through Him, through salvation. Jesus invented the encore. And today He wants to know what's your encore going to look like. He wants to know what you're going to do. See, I told you that you can hear the crowd on their feet when you're backstage, but don't you know that all of heaven is on its feet right now, wanting to see you through what God has led you to do? The Bible tells us that all of heaven is cheering you on. And if we could just get that, if we could hear that, then we'd do just like the artists. We would step back out from backstage. We would plant our seed. We would get in the middle of the mess, and we would do exactly what God had called us to do. I told you guys when I walked out here, I'm not a preacher. I told you there's been times that I didn't feel worthy. Maybe there's been times that you didn't feel worthy. that you didn't feel equipped. Maybe you're feeling that right now as the Lord speaks to you and you're thinking, Dustin, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just not ready. I'm just too young. I'm just too old. I want you to remember this when you leave here. Before God got involved, Noah wasn't a sailor. David wasn't a king. Water wasn't wine. And Lazarus, he wasn't alive. I want you guys to get messy. I want you to plant your mustard seed of faith. I want you to step on stage, and I want you to watch God move the mountains in your life. Amen? You guys have been amazing this morning. Thank you for playing along.